This is podcast number 4, and this is about building my own. Um, how can I say? Is the well? Actually, I forgot, but let me see. Okay, this is the. Let me see. Okay, so this is mainly about the printing and the publishing house that I'm building is the Brique and Bois um, publishing and printing house. And the as I was mentioning prior, um, this podcast is that I was talking about experiencing in publishing with the Amazon KDP Amazon. But now I'm want to be talking not about them anymore, but we'll be talking mainly about um, my publishing. The thing is that the person who came up with this idea when I started, like for instance, when I started writing my books, it was mainly only poetry. It was only stanzas. I called them stanzas. I didn't call them even poetry because I don't believe that they were close enough in being like the ones that you read in literature from other authors who were more experienced than I was. I was only starting, and this was around 1990, 1986, and then 1990, and then around 1992, 1993, my dad bought a book, a very thick book, and this was is entitled, which I still have, is the 1986 Writers Market. And this book that is so thick, around 1,000 something pages, it was from let me check, from Writers Digest books. And so with this particular book, inside it has all lots of tiny letters about the printing, the editors' houses that I could select from in the US only. And he was hinting me that I could one day set up my own editorial house to print my books, write them, publish them, then print them, bind them and so forth. There was one time that my youngest sibling, I'm not gonna mention her name because she's gonna get jumpy. Well, she taught me how to bind books because I didn't know how. I had my father had actually a few of his encyclopedia books, and I noticed that they were sewn, but I didn't know how to do it. And so she taught me that I had to like gather 3 blank pages and so forth. How many thick? How it depends on how thick I wanted the book to be. Not much of the content probably, and so we started. She told me how to sew it by 3 pages, but it was something done like you have to sew it with like leaving dashes. And what I wanted to do, instead of doing them with the white typical thread, I wanted to do it with hunter green, with sapphire green. I'm sorry, sapphire color, blue, red, because in back then I believe that the interior thread color would be the reflection of, or the cover would be the reflection of the inside of the thread. Meaning, if the thread was in red and hunter green or in sapphire color, it means that the cover was in color sapphire, ruby, or hunter green, in order to make it look vintage. And so I remember that in one of those encyclopedia books of my dad, there were, it talked about painters and artists and so forth from Claude Monet and Noir and so forth. So there was a bosom of a girl or a lady who was like embracing her chest, and then her cleavage would, pop up, and like she was looking rather sad. Her hair was curly. I don't remember exactly what was the name of that painting, but I believe it was Noir. And so I cut it. He found a lot of missing portraits, and eventually he did know from whom. Excuse me, from whom it was who cut them. It was me, because I took one of those for one of my diaries. So I would, because I like to journal since I was 13 years old, in Italy, and I started journaling back then, but I needed a cover to inspire me. So what I did is that when I cut that one in particular and I glued it onto and then added like a light film plastic thing so I will protect the book from staining because it was actually silk that I used to cover the hard cover of the diary. And that one instead, because I couldn't find the sapphire or navy blue or something similar, I think it was in color white, the thread, and then another one that I did the same with another cover or the picture itself. And then um, I used I used the color gold basically because it's like a mustard color that I use for the thread, which it didn't reflect the outside, but it made it look elegant from within. So I left it like that. But then it was then back then when I started noticing that I would write a novel. Actually, not a novel, but like a short story poem or something of that sort, like a stanza. I don't know. That whatever the cover was that I cut it, it would actually inspire me to write a novel, a story based upon that particular person, whoever that is, like Noir or Claude de Monet and so forth. Um, and also, and then my dad, I was embarrassing because dad once caught me typing in his one of his bulky computers. You know, back then they were bulky, they were not flat screens. I don't know what it was, but I was like, this is so probably you cannot even read it. It was embarrassing basically. So he looked rather surprised and like gave me that sort of smile that and I told him to back off because then he told me that that's what you are writing is not basically normal poetry, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm writing, I'm just expressing. And so we just left it like that. We didn't talk about it anymore, but he did afterwards that book, and so he hinted me that I should just create a publishing house so I can publish my books basically because or I can just knock on one of those editorial houses to see if they're willing to get my manuscripts. The thing is that I never did get to the point of sending my manuscript. I did package up like Joe March did on Little Women. You write the whole manuscript because I used a typewriter to do that. But and I I don't know how to say it, but I added like a cord and it was like a package basically. So it was that thick. But what I never did send it because they were I used to read in magazines and other books that editors' houses, if they don't like what you wrote, they will actually tell you that it doesn't weight much the story, so they just would reject it. And I did not want my contents, the book itself, the manuscript, to be rejected. So I just kept it like that. It looked pretty. That's what I thought only. But and then when I thought that maybe I could do the home thing or deal to bind it at home, right? So I started instead passing Charlotte as College Wonder, leaving aside the whistle, which it wasn't finished until later I finished it, but I'm still procrastinating if I should not polish it because it's too much of a macabre, creepy story based on something that we just us four in Italy we um, made a like film with using two cassette recorders. Basically, that was our movie. It was audio, so it was basically the first podcast in in the actual audio, making like a movie basically, but in a podcast with the four of us. But it was with the Barbies, shoes, socks, cans, big James, teddy bears, anything. Just it was those were the characters that we used. So for us, it was basically it was more of a fun ordeal. In one boring afternoon, and my grandmother in Italy, she was literally blind, but she can only hear us scream, but she didn't understand or know why we were screaming. We were actually filming a movie. That was very funny because, well, I cannot if I were to tell you, then you will probably understand why it's so macabre. Because the kids, after being in a discotheque with the adults, and I don't know what was the deal, but it was Barbie. So for us, it was fun back then. But now that I think about it, it doesn't make sense. What kids would being, what were they doing in a disco inside a train? Because the whole thing took place in the train. Actually, it was only um, two, I don't know, two trains basically, two wagons, and so with the children, they went to the bathroom. One by one, they were killed by a clown, and you listened. You could hear the clown's laughter, creepy laughter, and then the fun part was that, not the fun, but the funny part was that while the clown was killing the Barbie, the thing, or the teddy bear, whatever, those were our characters, right? So may just bear in mind with that it was funny for us, maybe not funny for you guys, but it was for us. So after the clown killed the kid, or the teddy bear, as an example, then it will continue to scream. So that was a blooper. Too many bloopers in between. And but what I did instead is that I do make an explanation. I give an explanation in the book how it was actually filmed. And that was probably the first podcast movie that it was ever done, created by the four of us. Meaning this, that the youngest of my siblings, she was 7. So that's how funny it was for us. Because in real life, the movie that we saw, it was always, of course, it was a clown, but then we twisted the whole thing because we just wanted to be more realistic. At least on my end, I wanted to make it more realistic, and so we used our whatever we had on hand. Even our foot, it was also a character. More feet, more characters. But in the end, I mean, it was useless because we could have recycled the same toy, but we just wanted to give a chance for each foot of ours to be a character in that podcast film that we recorded back in Italy a long time ago. And that was called actually Il Corno in Italian, but then I changed it to the whistle because you will listen to the whistle, although you can listen also to the laughter, the creepy laughter. But that was funny. That I think about it. I'm not sure if that we don't have a cassette player at the moment, but it would be pleasant if I would come by to that cassette because I have tons of cassettes over here, and one of them has to be Il Corno. And if I were to, find it and it works and just press play, put the recorder next to it, it would be the first film podcast that you ever hit. It will reach anywhere because that was it basically. And so on that one, I just left it aside. But with the particular typewriter, which I still have, and which I have the line on top, the laptop open, and that one is electrical. It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't start the engine anymore. Maybe because it got stuck. It has not been touched from since I was 27. And the ink itself is not. They don't sell those inks anymore for electrical typewriters. I remember that I used to sit on the floor and then place it on my laps, and then continue typing, and it was so loud. The typing part. Um, it was a plack, plack, plack sound that you could hear it from anywhere. You would know, oh, she's typing. All right. So it was too loud, versus the computer is just that it's not even loud when you type. You can get away with anything just typing. Oh, I mean, no one will notice that you're typing unless they see you working on the computer. Then eventually they know that I'm working here on the studio. And so I remember that with Charlotte as Cottage Wonder, what I did is that I was so complicated back then because I needed um, it needed to have in the French, so it was written in fully in English, but the dialogue remains in French. And then further on, then I added also, well, not on this one, but on the other one I did. But on this one, I did add the dialogue to be in French, literally, because she moves to France and then back to Scotland because she's Scottish. And then they live also in New England in the United States of America. But I kind of, played around with it. But the thing with her, with this novel, is that I also did like a mini version because I wanted to do like a pocket size, meaning pocket real size from the 1800 from Victoria's centuries or times or moments, is that you can hold it and then put it in your pocket of your skirt, not versus the one that you get from 5 to 8. Width is 5 and then the height is 8, and you can hold it with your hand, but it's not you can get away with it and put it in your pocket. That's something that I want to be able to do with my publishing house and printing house, is that I want to be able to hold a little book, make it thick enough, because you have, the thing is that I like to appreciate not the cover itself. The spine of the book needs to be appreciative as well. And most people, they just focus on the size of the book without appreciating that the spine is the most delicious part of it, because, or exquisite actually, the word part, because when you stand it up, it's either the character looking back at you, or you have a pretty spine to display on your bookshelves. And so the reason why I was also binding books with my youngest sister was also because I wanted to surround myself with the books that I wrote, the stories that I wrote. They were never intended to be published. I never intended them to go public. I didn't want anyone to read them because I did not want to have any, how can I say, rejections, criticism. I did not want anyone to criticize me. And if I were to ever be criticized, I would just ignore it. I don't like reading those type of headlines, honestly. In regards to me, I only Googled myself once, and there was a bullying going around with Stephanie Jarvis as well, with the Le Chateau de la Lande in France. She's the owner, one of the owners of the castle. But going back to my books, is that I also, either it was the hand pocket part of Charlotte's Cottage Wonder novel. I did also the 6 times 9, but I didn't even complete it to bind it, because then we left to Italy, and all of those things that did not fit in a container that we took to Italy, which we ended up losing, those things that actually stayed behind, including the manuscript for Charlotte, which I since the problem is that with my father, we always took our containers, that when we traveled around the world to any country, he was able to take it all out, everything. Versus when it was done with my brother, we lost it, and everything was lost. Everything. We didn't salvage anything at all. It's like whoever won the entire container actually had the entire house furnished with all the interiors in it, plates, piano, my beddings. I remember that I packed my bedside tables, the furnitures of my bedroom. They were all filled, because eventually when I will open them up, then everything will be in its place. And whenever I wanted to listen to music, then I just opened the bedside table, because everything was there, how I left it before. But the thing is that the manuscript, the typewriter, most of my high school books, books that my dad bought, and half of his encyclopedia. What else? A paper house, Victorian house that I have. I'm not sure if I bought. Yeah, that one stayed behind as well. And just a few things, but the majority of the stuff that remained behind was my dad's and mine's, and just a couple of things from my mom. But that's it. And nothing from my brother, because everything he had, he just put it all in the container. And And on my end, it was my high school books, basically. Um, I don't know, the typewriter. I was impressed that that one remained behind. And now that I'm want to go back to Italy, but I want to make things good, perfect. I don't want to mess up on anything. I just had to be all precisely being done correctly. I don't want to lose nothing that was left behind. So everything that was left behind, meaning plus the new items that I have acquired, such as journaling books, then those are coming with me. Everything, even if I will have to take with me 8 suitcases in first class. Yes, I will take them all. Everything comes with me. Nothing is staying behind. Even a dog, if that for that matter, I will take him to. So one learns from mistakes. But as for binding books, then I have started again practicing binding books. At least with a hardcover, because I think it's a little bit easier than paperbacks. Paperbacks, the problem is that when you do the final art and so forth, and regards that you have glued the whole pages together to do them very tight, you have to cut them just 1 millimeter. Cut it from the, how can I say, when the opening of the book, when you open it, that part has to be trimmed, because whenever you do the binding part, the stitching, the gluing, and so forth, when you go to the other end of the book, you can see that it's uneven. So to make it even, you have to trim it, but you have to trim it with a very cutting edge, sharp blade, and that's so dangerous, because if you don't calculate, you can cut your hands. Actually, your fingers. You can lose your fingers for doing that, and so. But I think that if I have to be very careful, because I remember that dad used to have one, but it has with the handle, and I believe that it has like I remember that it was very heavy. So being that heavy, I'm not sure if I would to take it ever to travel with me, because I think that will be one thing that I would decide to leave behind. Because can you imagine if a customer, somebody removes the what's it called, the I forgot the word, but somebody removes the lock, the security lock, and then the blades goes up, and then when it goes down, the man loses half of an angle of his hand, including fingers, perhaps the fingers with the hand, I don't know, and the knuckle, something like that. Then that would be my fault. Versus if I leave it, it would save me a lot of headaches. And so that will be one thing that I will leave behind. And probably, well, I will take the printer, because I can just, change the adapter at the end, still be able to use it, and put it in the suitcase probably. The suitcases has to be large, I know that, because I have to not only add a couple of books in it, um, it would be the clothes, and probably, because I also purchased a little mini size, not a mini size, but it's a small, rather small sewing machine that I can still use over there. So that would be something, because I have a full-time job that has to do with podcasts on YouTube and the YouTube channel. I have a full-time also with my books that Amazon is not paying me at the moment, not paying anyone as far as I'm concerned, and that is like a big concern, because I think I have like $100 and something, 125 that they have not paid me, and that's why I'm pushing forward with my editorial printing house. So publishing printing house press. I'm not sure if it's going to be. I know that is the title. The editorial itself is actually Brique and Bois, meaning that is bricks, red bricks, and bois is wood. And since I like exterior buildings that are dressed up in red bricks and with white French windows, and I also adore, like for instance, I appreciate also when you walk, or the minute that you step inside a house and you get to see, you turn your eyes up, and you get to see the beams running from across the ceiling. That is what I like. So it's brick, exterior, and bois, the woods, the whole thick beam woods that uh, go across the ceiling, which is for me fundamentally I like that. That's why I chose it to call it brick and bois. But the actual logo itself is actually a sailing boat. It's not even a castle. I thought of doing the castle, but then how many editors' houses have a castle? Versus if I chose a sailing boat, which is something that I like, just looking at. Not sure if I will ever own one. I don't think so because I'm 51 years old, even though I look younger, but my body doesn't have the strength to be able to control that. And so, what I'm gonna be doing instead, perhaps one day, is owning a gondola or something of that sort, because I have to move around in Venice, and it's either by walk, you walk, or if it's in the lagoon as I want it, then or you just go on boat. Have a chauffeur or something to drive the boat for you. That is basically what I ambition, what I want, what I need actually. As much as that I want is what I need. And so right now I'm in that stage, but my dad was the one who gave me basically the idea to do the publishing house, and the printing house was also my youngest sister, because excuse me, she taught me how to do the binding of the books. I don't know who taught her. Maybe it was journalism class when she was in high school, but she taught me how to do that part. And then my father just he knew how to as well, but he gave me his full time support, 100%, in doing the binding of books as well. He gave me permission to use his tools at his laboratory because he was an electronic engineer. But he's lent me his clamps to press the book so I can glue it. To pass the other slim, I don't remember what's it called, cast I think it is, but the little thread that you put, um, that is so thin, and then you just put it onto the spine of the book. But the thing is that I also needed to use acid-free paper, so it would not get decayed fast. And also, he told me that I need to put a lot of heavy objects on top of the book, but it has to be flat onto it to remain flat, because otherwise then the pages will go wavy, and that will be an issue for publishing, for the printing of books forever. Like for instance, if you needed to sell it in great scale, if you will go international, a client would not want, or a reader or author, whatever, would not want to appreciate a book that is so pretty done by the hardcover, and then when it's opened, then the pages are completely all wavy because of humidity. But so humidity causes wavy pages as well. So all the books have to remain with a heavy thing onto it, pressing down onto them, so it would not do that. Also, pages need to be acid free. So it's a huge learning process, but it's worth on the end, because it's important to do a good job for people whenever want to read a book. It's not only holding a book and the story within, but the effort that it took the printing house to create a book, to write the content, bind the book. That one for me is an art. Actually, it's an artisanal art, and most people don't understand that. They don't get it. Whenever they see a book, they just toss it. It's like an extra book. But if you are not an author yourself, and you are not in the publishing printing department, then you don't know what it feels like to be stabbed when books are tossed around, when you find books that are outmolded. Such, for instance, if I go right now, because I have the computer on as always, and I go by Venezia books tossed, because there's a place in Venezia, in Venice, Italy, that there's a vintage store where they sell vintage things outside of vintage books, but the ones that are rotten and molded, they just stack them outside. People take pictures as if nothing that is an art. For me, it's an insult. So Venezia books tossed, molded, molded outside. I'm not quite sure what is the street, what is the name of the street, but there is a place in Venezia that you can find. How do you get mold out of books? Well, no, there is a place in Venezia where there's a stack of books that are molded and people take pictures. It's like, I mean, well, there you go. So Venice Floods cause these books to be tossed like that. I mean, it hurts because those are also encyclopedia books. And but nobody does anything to get those books, and then I don't know, maybe recycle or destroy them, because and you cannot even say, okay, I'm gonna open it and check out um the copyright part, because I have to contact the owner of these books, the author. There's no need to do that, honestly. If you were ever to find any of my books and they're molded, just destroy the whole thing. Don't contact me, let me know, because it will hurt me, honestly. And so these are encyclopedia books. Venice Floods, disagree, bear with me. So Venice Floods, world's most bookshop underwater. So there's a bookshop from this guy, and I understand that he lives exactly at the bottom first floor. That's the first floor usually is not ever rented, because it's the first floor that will end up reaching the high tide, l'Acqua Alta of Venezia. And for him, maybe it's a proud thing to have a store in which Venice floods are the ones that always reach his store, and those books will always end up going on in water. I mean, it's not an art, just destroy them. For me, it's an insult. And the whole wall is entirely covered with stacked books horizontally. Most of them are molded. He has like new ones from what I see here. It's like, and also there is a huge gondola that I'm seeing inside the bookshop, filled with books. Would not want to find or see any of my books there. I mean, I will go crazy if I were to see one of my books. It's like, why did it end up here? I would just take it, but I will not pay it. I will just show him I'm the owner of this book, and I will take it. The owner is Luigi Frizzi. So he's the owner of the bookshop, and it's located near Piazza San Marco and Ponte di Rialto in Calle Lunga, Santa Maria, Formosa. Amazing that I was able to look up the address in his actual website. The website is called Wanted in Milan. Since 19, let me see. I'm not sure if it's 1965 or 1985. Can you believe it? We're just talking about that here. Oh my God. All right. So it says we call ourselves Acqua Alta, of course, because they are in the first level. We expect high water, but not this high. One of the independent bookshop's co-owners, Diana, told the online literary publication Libreriamo.it, opened in 2004 by owner Luigi Frizzi, and the bookshop is located near Piazza San Marco and so forth. And then it says the flood have led the Italian government to declare a state of emergency in Venice, which has been brought to its knees, according to the city mayor. Cover photo by Corner of Italy. So this is perhaps when it happened, but nobody did anything about those books in regards that um, they didn't destroy them. When books are molded, you don't want to showcase them as if those are were the art of the country, meaning of Venezia, because it actually depicting that Venice, the culture of Venice is molded. a showcase on the walls. You can see all the books molded decayed. That's what is representing to me the culture or readers of Venezia is molded. So if I were the mayor of Venezia, get all those rotten books out of the way. Like, bear with me, destroy those books instead of leaving them to. It's not a thing or an ordeal of displaying it as culture, because then the culture is also molded. It sucks. Um, so just gonna check out this or entire ordeal, but it's so sad. I mean, I would not want, as I mentioned before, to find any of my books in that place in person. I mean, if I do, and then I have to like let him know, like, show him my credentials. I am the owner of this book. I'm not gonna pay you for it. I'm just gonna take it with me, and that's it. But as for the rest of the books in that place, I would not even attempt to buy it, because you should not have any store that is level of the Acqua Alta in Venezia to be, or per any person for that matter, or say as a sewing machine, you would be going into short circuit if you ever to have a company that is has to do with sewing machines, and you have an aqua tube going down there. You're going to lose it eventually when there's Acqua Alta. And so Acqua Alta means high tide, high water, when it rises up the ocean. And in Venezia, it's a typical thing. It's very common. But it's so sad to find rotten books like that. Just, and that's the thing that I had in my mind, but I never thought that they had an actual gondola. Gondola is the actual taxi, black taxi, medieval boats that were used back then, and still now, because you have to sell Venice as a tourist country. You have to still they still use the type of boats to drive around tourists and locals, and to showcase their city and so forth. But this is about it, and I just wanted to talk about that part, because later on I will be talking about, this is like a chain basically. It changes podcast. It changed to, they talk about one subject, but then that leads to another one, and there's like it's opening another portal and then another door and so forth. They keep on talking about the same other topics that are touching this one, and it gets intricate. But I'm gonna be talking in the other podcast about Venezia itself, probably about the culture and how it was created in a podcast. Why not? Have a delightful evening, and I will see you on the next podcast, number 5. Actually, wait, not on podcast number 5. This is number 5. It's gonna be on podcast. What is it? Podcast number 6. Yeah, because this is number 5. See you later.